right, guys, it's time to begin. First off, I'd like to just make sure that everybody can see the screen, on their screen, the presentation that I'm displaying.
Yes.
Cool. So with that, I'll start. I'm Antonio Colindres, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at SiiLA. I want to welcome every one of you to SiiLA's first global live session. Today, we will be speaking about the commercial real estate industry and its rapid evolution in Latin America. And I have the honor of being accompanied by Giancarlo Nicastro, CEO of SiiLA Brazil, and José Alemán, CEO of SiiLA Mexico. Welcome, guys.
Thank you very much, Anto. Thank you, guys, for being connected.
Thank you, guys. Good morning, everyone.
Great. So before I jump in, I'd like to speak about SiiLA's relevance in the commercial real estate markets of Latin America. SiiLA is the leading commercial real estate data and analytics platform for the region. We're a U.S. company based out of Dallas, Texas, with operations in Brazil, Mexico, and in 2021, we're opening our office in Colombia. So our journey began 6 years ago when we identified the pain points that key players in the real estate industry were having in our region because they couldn't obtain independent and reliable data. So we saw an opportunity to participate in the transparency, in the process of creating transparency in our markets. And today we are very proud to be part of the market's evolution. So first off, I mentioned we cover Brazil, we cover Mexico, and in 2021, we're launching SiiLA Colombia. But in the meantime, let's go over Brazil and Mexico and compare these two markets to get a better understanding of what we're looking at. So to start off, in Brazil, we cover 13 million square meters of office space. In Mexico, we cover 15 million square meters of office space. In the retail sector, we cover 16 million square meters of shopping centers in Brazil and 18 million square meters of shopping centers in Mexico. And on the industrial asset side, we cover 16 million square meters of industrial space in Brazil versus 56 million square meters of industrial space in Mexico. Brazil's population is 212 million versus Mexico's of 120 million. So looking at these numbers, the first thing that comes to mind is what is going on with the industrial market in Mexico? What is unique about Mexico's industrial market that leads it to have such a big supply of industrial product?
Well, thank you very much, and thanks to the audience. Thanks for being connected today, guys. We have a lot of opportunities, and that's I do not think we have reached our full potential yet. I think there are many opportunities in the industrial sector, mainly for logistics and manufacturing. Today we have the recent signing of the USMCA agreement, which will lead a lot of opportunities for foreign companies that want to establish either in the northern region for manufacturing operations or in the center of the country for logistics and retail operations. So I think we have a lot of opportunities. We have had very good fundamentals. We have healthy numbers and metrics, at least in the last 5 quarters. So I think we're in a good shape in that matter. I mean, talking specifically in industrial and in the industrial side in both subsectors. And, there's, generally speaking, we have had a good activity in the transactional market as well. Under the circumstances or even the circumstances of the actual pandemic that we're living today, we have a lot of activity. I mean, not a lot, but yeah, we have had activity in the transactional market, at least two or three transactions, very important transactions to target specifically, e-commerce and logistics operations in the near areas of urban regions, right? So I think, generally speaking, we can start on that, and we have a lot of opportunities in Mexico. We have a huge market. We have a lot of land. We have a almost 3,000 kilometers border, which connect us with the biggest market in the world. And I think there's that represent a lot of opportunities for foreign companies that want to sell to the United States and Canada, and for local companies as well to want to do business with those countries.
Sure, thank you. That's really insightful, and I'll go back to those transactions in a few minutes so we can talk about those, because those are very interesting. But I'd also like to get Giancarlo's perspective, understanding about Mexico's unique position, geographic position right next to the largest economy of the world. When you see Mexico's industrial map, you can see that the northern border is a huge industrial market. So understanding the differences between Brazil and Mexico, and seeing the difference in population between Brazil and Mexico, do you feel that there's a big opportunity in Brazil to continue to increase this asset type?
Well, in my opinion, I need to start to answer this question just to mention this type of assets here in Brazil started 2010. It means we have 10 years of historical data of this type of assets. But the answer is yes, the demand is growing faster, and the COVID-19 shows to us how important is this type of assets here. When we analyze the three main commercial real estate industries, like corporate offices, industrial parks, and shopping malls, industrial property markets has remained the most stable, and certain assets have been leveraged during the crisis. The problem here in Brazil is more than 8% of the total inventory are concentrated in Southwest region, and more than 7% are located inside the state of São Paulo. It's like a babe starting to walk in here in Brazil in terms of assets. Offices, it's old investment type here in Brazil, shopping malls, more than 50 years here in Brazil, and warehouses started when the foreign companies start to invest here in Brazil.
That's really insightful. So let's dig a little deeper into these markets to understand the differences between the Sao Paulo industrial market and the Mexico City industrial market. And to do that, I just want to put it into context once again and talk about what SiiLA monitors. In Brazil, we monitor Class A+, A, and B. And in Mexico, it's the same class of properties, but they're labeled A and B. We have 9.3 million square meters of industrial space in the Sao Paulo industrial market, and 9.7 million meters in Mexico City market. We have a vacancy rate of 18% in Sao Paulo and a vacancy of 3.2% in Mexico. And in the Sao Paulo industrial market, we have rents for $3.52 a square meter. And in Mexico City, we have rents at $5.67. So these look like very similar markets, but they're fundamentally acting in a very different way. So I'd like to start off with Giancarlo a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with the industrial market in Sao Paulo. And are you seeing those vacancy rates and asking rents across the board? Or is that something particular to submarkets within the Sao Paulo industrial market?
Yeah, the state of São Paulo, it's very extensive. And when we put all regions together, we see this amount of vacancy. But I recommend always, when we are looking this type of assets here in Brazil, I recommend to analyzing this marketing by regions. It means regions near of city of São Paulo, the largest consumer pool, in the country, the reality is totally different. We have here one region it calls Cajamar. It's 20 minutes from my office here. And the vacancy rate, it's less than 10%. And it means that the vacancy rate is regarding to more distance developments of São Paulo. When you compare Mexico and Brazil, in my opinion, the vacancy rate is totally connected with asking rent. When you have more demand, the vacancy rate reduces and the prices increase. And the opposite is the same. That's the problem that we have in Brazil. And in terms of tenants, we have three big groups growing during these pandemic sectors: is transport and logistics, personal cares, and e-commerce. Of course, I think is the same in Mexico. JC could explain better.
Yeah, I think that's really good, and it makes total sense. The nice thing about SiiLA is that we can actually segment by region and analyze those different regions that Giancarlo was mentioning. So, JC, on the other hand, we see vacancy rates of 3.24 for the industrial space of Mexico City. What challenges does this pose? Who does this benefit, and who does this affect negatively? Tell us a little bit about what's going on.
That's a very good question, Anto. And it's kind of a paradox, as I can see it. Yeah. On the one hand, we have a very good numbers. We have very healthy fundamentals. I mean, compared with other Latin American countries. But on the other hand, we have some markets with very few vacant space, and this has a downside, right? Especially for brokers, because they do not have any vacant space to offer, right? So let me give you an example. For example, the Tijuana market, which is very close to the border, it's a very dynamic region, and its proximity to the California economy, which is one of the largest ones of the United States. It's in the last 4 to 5 quarters, the vacancy rate was very low. It was 1%. And second quarter 2020, the market have doubled it, right, to 2%, which means like around 60,000 square meters. But we don't know. I mean, if under the current circumstances, under the considering the recent USMC agreement, which will push a lot of companies nearshoring Mexico, that space will be enough, right? For instance, we have around 20 to 25 companies who already raised their hands to establish operations in Bajío and in the northern regions, industrial regions in Mexico, right? So imagine if there is a broker which who have 2 or 3 clients, and they wanted to establish operations immediately. They have they don't have so much space, or they don't have, in some cases, any space to offer them. So that's the downside of the story, right? So let's say that we have 20 to 25 companies, and these companies hypothetically want to establish immediately. So in the best case scenario, they have to wait at least 2 or 3 months. In the worst case scenario, they have to wait 3 quarters maybe, right? So this is important because, there's, if you don't have any vacant space as a landlord or as an investor, these big companies talking about logistics or talking about manufacturing, they will go to the neighbor, right? To the people or the investor that has, this vacant space, because they want it immediately. So should be a balance. There should be a balance between spec space and build-to-suit projects in Mexico, because all this combination between the TMEC or the USMC agreement will, attract a lot of companies because of the nearshoring effect to establish operations in Mexico. So, and that doesn't mean that, we will have less new stock for the upcoming years, because for instance in Mexico City we will have around 1 million square meters in the next 8 quarters, right? New stock. So, but what I'm saying is we have, or maybe, that the investors have to, take this balance between spec space that now it's too risky to start thinking spec space because of the situation, right? Now you're thinking of in liquidity. Now you're thinking in, take care of the money that you have. And when when we have a vaccine, you start pulling the trigger and start doing this kind of investments. But at the same time, you have to be ready, to be prepared for those companies, those huge companies. And this is the case of Mercado Libre. Mercado Libre have increased their space for inventory 6 times in the last 4 quarters, and that's because they found in some cases they found vacant spaces ready to be occupied. So that's a paradox. I think there's a good story of it, and there's a downside of it. But we should have, as an investors, the investors have to find this balance between spec and build to suit projects.
That's really insightful. And one of the things that Giancarlo mentioned that I think we need to dig in a little deeper is how vacancy affects asking rents. But it's not only vacancy that affects asking rents, right? When we look at asking rents in dollars, you also have to think about the currency risk. So thinking about what JC was talking about, that there's foreign companies installing themselves in Mexico. The Mexican market is a little more dollarized than the Brazilian market. So currency changes affect rental rates in dollars in Sao Paulo, because those are real denominated, whereas in Mexico, there's much more dollar denominated rent. Would you guys like to comment about that, or do you guys want to move on to the next part and talk about those transactions?
Yeah, in Mexico's case, we have, and now I'll give you the example of one of the biggest funds or REITs that we have, specialized REITs in Mexico, which is Prologis. Prologis, 50% of its portfolio is peso denominated, at least in Mexico City, right? And 53% of its portfolio in Guadalajara is peso denominated. So that gives us an example of the between Brazil and Mexico. There's a lot of differences, and this one is one of the most important ones, because in Mexico, logistics is more tend to be peso denominated, right? Because in manufacturing, on the other hand, we have a lot of tenant improvements because there's a lot of technology that you have to put together in one warehouse, and there's a lot of TIs there, right? So, and as well, all the capital goods that they produced, they're sold in the United States and Canada. So their clients pays in dollars. So that makes sense that the contracts are dollar denominated for manufacturing, and in the case of logistics and transportation, the clients are local ones, Mexicans, right? So that pays in pesos. So that's why it makes sense that the 50% at least of the contracts are peso denominated contracts, more in the logistic and transport side.
Great. You guys were talking about the driver of the e-commerce within industrial space. Giancarlo mentioned it, and you mentioned it, and I think it's a global tendency that has accelerated. So maybe let's start with Gian. Tell us, a little bit about this expansion of the e-commerce, and what opportunities and challenges do you see for Brazil in this segment?
Yeah, the opportunity is huge. People who never bought on the internet were forced to buy now, and they indicated a path of no return. That's our opinion here in Brazil. They grow 10 years in 3 months, we like to say it. And in Brazil, I see the biggest challenge for this sector is the internet connection. Could be junior problem, but that's our reality here. When you are out of São Paulo or the main cities in Brazil, you don't have a good quality of internet. Sometimes you don't have internet connection, and it's the key to start to buy any stuff by internet. You need a connection. And the other problem here in Brazil, people, they don't have access to banking account. And how do you are planning to buy something if you don't have a credit card, if you don't have internet connection? That's one problem that we have here in Brazil, in my opinion. And the e-commerce companies like to say, it's very common to hear from them, that in Brazil we don't have assets with quality out of São Paulo, and it's a problem to expansions out of this state, because the e-commerce is not to deliver to be near of the main cities, but you need to have different assets around the country. You need to deliver faster, and that's the problem in Brazil. And when we are looking for, when the companies are looking for assets, they are looking for assets with class A plus and A here in Brazil. And the total inventory, it's like 50% represents A plus and A. And they are located in São Paulo, most of them. When we talked with Amazon and Mercado Livre here in Brazil, they trying to expand their operations for the other cities, and they start a movement to go to the north of our country this quarter, but they are looking for other spaces in the other regions in Brazil, but they have some problems to implement.
That's really valuable. And I think, part of that story is seen on this graph that we're displaying. If you look at the graph from, this semester, 2020, the first semester of 2020, which includes the COVID pandemic, which has roiled financial, markets and has created a lot of uncertainty, you see that the footprints of these two giant e-commerce conglomerates are still expanding and still growing. So, JC, what is happening with e-commerce in Mexico, and is e-commerce sustaining Mexico's industrial markets?
Well, I think that's a very good question, Anto. And the last, as Jan just mentioned, the last 3 months we have witnessed a huge growth in e-commerce and retail sales due to this pandemic. According to McKinsey's report that I just read yesterday, in terms of sales, we have jumped 10 years forward in 90 days time. So it's been a lot, right? So this acceleration has made institutional players face in Mexico basically two happy problems. One is the lack of capacity / infrastructure to take and return in an efficient way all the products that are being demanded in the major markets, Mexico City, Monterrey, and Guadalajara, right? So second, the lack of space inventory, right, for inventory. Mercado Libre, for instance, have grown, as I said at the very beginning of the presentation, have grown 6 times his inventory space capacity in the last 4 to 5 quarters. In the fifth of this growth is in the first half of this year. So it's been crazy, right? So, but logistics in Mexico is a very important slice of the business in real estate, right? But the proximity to the US, along with the low labor costs, have developed a huge capital goods and manufacturing sector, which it's kind of the same thing with automotive industry in Brazil. Especially with electronics and aerospace in Mexico, in the case of Mexico. For instance, these 3 sectors represent 50% of the occupied space in Monterrey in the industrial market. So another thing that it's important to say is that USMCA and COVID-19 combination will cause an important nearshoring effect, as I mentioned at the very beginning. Simply because companies located in Asia will prefer health, safety over efficiency, right? Clearly, because they don't want to go through another pandemic like the one that we're living today. So answering your question, e-commerce, yeah, that's true. It's accelerating and helping the industrial markets in Mexico, but fortunately, it's not the only driver that we have, right? So we have more eggs in the basket.
Great, that's really insightful.
Sorry,
go ahead.
To you.
No, of course.
Just to mention, Amazon started their operations here in Brazil 1 year ago.
Well, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's totally new here in Brazil.
That's really incredible. So we have a lot to look forward to. In SiiLA, we'll continue to track these growing sectors and industries as they expand and continue to grow away from those major cities like Sao Paulo and Mexico City. It's going to be really interesting to see the penetration of e-commerce within Latin America. So moving on to the office space, we wanted to compare office CBD Sao Paulo. CBD is the central business district, and compare it with the Mexico CBD. In Brazil, in Sao Paulo, we cover 169 Class A plus A and B properties in the CBD of Sao Paulo. And in Mexico, we do the same with 151 offices. We have 3.1 million square meters of inventory in Sao Paulo and 2.6 million square meters of inventory in Mexico City CBD. The vacancy rate is 15% for Sao Paulo CBD and 10.7% for Mexico CBD. Asking rents are $15.97 for Sao Paulo CBD and $28.67 for Mexico City CBD. So, JC, considering the rapidly changing work habits accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic, we need to wonder, what will the office sector look like when considering the new social distancing norms and the work from home culture?
Well, that's a really good question, Anto. And we have both sides of the story here because it includes, and I know that we're going to talk about a little bit later the flex space, but in the office sector in Mexico, it's kind of difficult, and I think it's too early to tell what's going to happen with that sector. So far, we have a very steady, let's say, fundamentals in the sector. I mean, taking into account that we took the last picture on the second quarter this year, right? Because we went to the field and we track all these properties in let's the case of Mexico City, right? Mexico City has over 400, or we monitor over 400, properties, A plus and A, and the fundamentals specifically for the CBD were very good. But we are not underestimating the effects of COVID-19 in this sector. The fact is that in second quarter we saw a very good fundamentals so far for the office sector, and that doesn't mean that in the near future, in the upcoming months or quarters, we won't see some move outs of the tenants. That was the case of there's an important company, development and investment company in Mexico, which calls Sordo Madalena Group. And they move out from one of the most important, corporate buildings in Mexico City, which is Antara Corporativo. They left around 2,000 square meters there. So, this healthy fundamentals took it in second quarter. Doesn't mean that this is going to list for the next quarters, right? So that's important to notice that because as you know, we present the results 1 quarter later So it's kind of crazy. As I said, it's too early to tell what's going to happen with this. It's like a sandwich, right? This sector. We know that the industrial sector have been behaving very well. We know that the retail sector have been struggling a lot. But office sector, we do not know what's going to happen to them for the next couple of quarters. So so far it remains with a very healthy, healthy numbers. We have a couple of outliers in Mexico. We have the north submarket, which has historically, the last 5 quarters, we have seen over 40% of vacancy rates. And on the other hand, we have another outlier, which is the Periférico Sur submarket, which has 2% vacancy rate. So it's kind of crazy when you see these two worlds, right, in the same market. And then you have the CBD, which behaves very good with a 10% vacancy rate. And if you take out, those markets, Periférico Sur and Norte, you have around 12 to 13% of vacancy rate, which means that is a healthy market. But again, that doesn't mean we're not underestimating the effects of COVID in this sector. But now I think it's too early to tell what's going to happen by year end with this sector.
That's great. I think it's very important what you're saying, and definitely let's stay up to date with what happens in this sector and how it continues to perform. Gian, what are your perspectives on this? We've also seen some concrete actions that have been taken in the market to ensure tenants remain within their space. So please tell us about what are the tendencies that you guys are seeing in Brazil when it comes to office space?
Okay, Anton. It's important to remember the real estate we live in cycles here in Brazil. And I think around the world is the same. And for offices, of course, it's important to look a few years back when we had other crises here in Brazil. I mention it because it will be the first crisis that we will start in the right way of the cycle. It means we will see offices being returned, but in the other hand, we don't have a huge supply coming in the same time as we had during the other crisis. I think we will suffer less during this period. The problem here in Brazil, in São Paulo, it's a lack of public transportation. We don't have a good subways. We don't have good public transportation to arrive faster in the total city. And that's the problem that we suffer here in Brazil. And another thing, you show it for 10 minutes ago in the first slide, the second slide, our employee rate, it is growing faster, and those employees are responsible to reduce or increase the vacancy rate in offices. That's the problem here. If you compare Mexico and Brazil, it's clear our unemployee rate is 12%, and take a look in Mexico, 3%. It makes a huge difference, and it affects in terms of asking rent and the other things that we know. And I like to mention here in Brazil, another problem is our economy that is walking sideways. We never had a good, when we start this year, we'll beat the year. It will be the best year since 2000 and I don't know when. And now we have this problem. But I'm positive with the near future, with the marketing. And I think we will have some problems with the new trend in terms of home office. But I'm not feel, it will,
replace.
Replace and what we need to do with our offices. No, I think they will do. Companies are looking for open, once a week at home, twice a week at home, and they will reduce a little bit their space, but they need to work into their offices. They need to change ideas day by day. That's my point of view that I'm trying to convince people. It's not the end of the world, you know.
That's really interesting, and I think that touches on our next subject, which is co-working space. Because of this flexibility that employees are going to require from their employers, or they're going to want. The pandemic started in the American continent in March, and all of us have been working from home ever since. So I think there's going to be a shift, like Giancarlo said. And it's going to be interesting to understand how co-working is going to be positioned to accept this new challenge. So here in this slide, we have the concentration of co-working as percentage of total space in the CBD areas of Sao Paulo and Mexico City. So we can see that co-working occupies 9% of all the square meters of office in Mexico City, and 5% of co-working of all the space in CBD Sao Paulo. When we drill down and we look at the concentration of who owns that space, we can see that in Mexico, 65% of that space is leased out to WeWork, and in Brazil, 60% of that space is leased out to the same company. So, JC, considering the new normal and some of the issues that WeWork has had, you sense an inherent risk for the market to have such a high concentration of space dedicated to co-working?
Well, I think that the business model of flex spaces have born with this risky or risk model, right? Because there is always that's good, because they make short terms of leases with their clients and sign long-term contracts with their landlords. And that's what's happening here in Mexico, at least in Mexico City, right? For instance, one of the biggest, WeWork, and it's the biggest one in terms of footprint in Mexico. It leases to a great percentage of the GLA to one REIT, which is Puno, right? And by contrast, this company could take advantage of this flexibility to close more deals faster. But that little consideration is very risky, because the model it's totally different, facing the landlord and facing their clients, and we have both sides of the story. And some people that believe this is going to be the end for flex space, and some people that think the other way around. From this efficiency standpoint, I truly believe that flex space will be more necessary than compared before COVID. And this is due to a higher flexibility, and not all the employees have the infrastructure to work from home. Even if we want to, as companies, we want to send them to home, they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the space, they don't have the right connection, as Giancarlo said. They don't have the right technology to operate from their homes. So there's lack of all those things. So that even bad organization habits from the part of the employee. So that's kind of all these aspects, all these things will make more important the flex space than before, or compared to before COVID. So that's why there's always a risk in the model. That's what I think. But after COVID, or when we find a vaccine, I think all these habits or consumption habits will remain in the time will remain. So I think flex space for cities like Sao Paulo, Brazil, Santiago, and Bogota will remain and will be successful. So that's my thought.
That's really insightful, and I think it's also important to understand Brazil's perspective in this case, and Giancarlo's uniquely positioned to kind of give us his thoughts on this.
Before to start, I need to apologize because I told home office, but it's common here in Brazil. The right term is working from home. I'm sorry, people. And just to sum with JC's comments, here in Brazil, we don't have clear labor laws about regarding the working from home. It's a big penalty here in Brazil. But starting with this question in terms of co-working, I remember when co-working started to grow faster in the last crisis here in Brazil. It was in 2016, something like that, 2017. Some journalists calls to me to ask if they are hurting the market. And I said, no, they are a good solutions for our sector because it means they grow during the crisis. And they are growing during this crisis again. Because in my opinion, they are a good solutions in terms of rents. Our lease term here in Brazil, it's around 5 years with big fines. And they came in an opposite side if we look at their opportunities or their type of model we call flexible spaces and flexible contracts. And they have several assets around the city. One trend here in Brazil, we are hearing a lot of, it's to reduce your time inside the public transportation. It means to find one place to your employees near their home. And this trend is to rent 10 floors in 10 different buildings instead to rent 10 floors in the same building. I recorded a video inside of Regis to show how they are operating their offices. This video is inside of our YouTube channel here in Brazil, and I will recommend you to watch. Regis work during the crisis and follow all safety protocols for users.
I think that's really interesting, and without a doubt, when we look across the board, lease flexibility is a top priority for tenants because of the uncertainty in which we live in. I think plug and play is also a tendency that is moving forward. Tenants don't want to have to build out spaces and take care of all that stuff, especially now. And a good point that Giancarlo brought is that co-working space is extremely operational. It's an operational business. And from my perspective, I think they're uniquely positioned to take care of all these new norms and operations that need to be implemented to ensure safety in the workplace. So that's my thought on it. I thought it was really interesting to hear your guys' perspective. And now let's move on to the retail sector. We've talked about the industrial sector, which has been performing pretty well. The office sector, which is kind of the big unknown. And finally, we're going to talk about the retail sector. The conversation wouldn't be complete without it, but we've all heard that shopping centers as we know them are dead, but key players aren't ready to call quits on these assets. So, Gian, what have you seen, concrete actions have you seen, these shopping center owners and operators taking to retain tenants and to improve the mall performance?
Well, it's a noise. I don't know what happened. Can you hear me? Clear?
Yep, clear.
Okay. It was a noise here near me. The landlords here in Brazil, they reduce their condominium fees, rents, and promotion funds. They are moving for a digital sales in the opposite of the concept of the shopping malls. In my opinion, the shopping malls started a huge change of concept 5 years ago here in Brazil. Nowadays, the shopping malls, I think it's a global trend, is more for experience than buy stuffs. As we said in the industrial, we start to say about the e-commerce, the experience that people need, they are forced to have. And another thing here in Brazil, we have a problem with security. And we are looking for a movement that good restaurants, they are coming inside of shopping malls. and they are open more space to share experience inside of their assets. And another curious case here in Brazil, we have some co-workers inside of the shopping malls. And it shows how difficult it is to keep the same concept when they were created 50 years ago, 40 years ago. I don't know exactly the date of what this concept was created. But during the pandemic, what I saw here in Brazil, they open a drive-through system. It means you buy stuff in a digital channel and go to the parking lot to pick up. It was one thing that they did here in Brazil. And some landlords, they created a marketplace to put all stores in the same channel of sales to helping their tenants. It was to keep their tenants and try to helping them to make some sales. The landlords, they have more power to put all stores together. And here in Brazil, the forecast for this sector, they are saying to return to pre-COVID levels, it's at least in 2 years. And that is a big challenge, and nobody knows what will happen in the near future, because as I said 10 minutes ago, the problem is the economy here. It's not only the crisis of COVID-19, but we have other problems here.
That's really, really good. And I'm sure we've seen some of these same measures in Mexico, but JC, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in this space.
Yeah, I mean, from what we have, monitored in the second quarter, 2020, we have seen a lot of move outs. I mean, a lot of more than move outs, a lot of negotiations between landlord and tenants. We have seen a lot of deferrals and financial plans for tenants as well. The occupancy for second quarter, it remains poor. I mean, generally speaking, for the formats that we track, which are regional, super regional, community, neighborhood centers, remain, good. Like in a healthy, it remains healthy, but we don't know what will happen with this. Tenants that are not essential businesses in the next, 2 or 3 quarters, because they're not getting that deferrals or that supports from their landlords. And just to give you an example, the REITs, Mexican REITs or FIBRAs, they're struggling a lot as well, because in that sector particularly, right? Because all the account receivables for second quarter, the 80% of them are because of the deferrals and the financial plans that they establish with their clients. Right, but this is better than to lose a tenant, because according to our investor survey, the marketing period, which means that if one tenant moves out, it will take you around 14 and 18 months to get back another tenant. So landlords are prefer now to take care of all their tenants than to let them go. So because it's going to be a lot more expensive to let them go, right? So that's our picture on second quarter, and then there's a lot of plans as well, a lot of initiatives from the groups. Important groups in Mexico. The one example of that is, this huge company which is called Urbana. They launched recently a digital platform to help their tenants to have this platform to like an additional channel to make sales, right? Because the decreasing in the demand and the traffic to the shopping malls were affecting a lot to this property. So this is the only one. I mean, everybody talks about this kind of initiatives, but this is the only one that I have seen in the last 3 months. This is the only player that I've that has had this initiative in the recent or under the circumstances that we're living today, right? So it's kind of crazy that everyone is talking about digital transformation, and just one player in Mexico launched this kind of initiative. So, and then we had recently a conversation, a very interesting conversation with Andrew Strang, who is one of the most talented advisors in the sector. And he gave us, this 4 tendencies in the Latin American or 4 Latin American shopping malls, particularly for Mexico, right? I'll summarize, and there's four tendencies that will help, the recovery of the shopping malls in Mexico. One of them is a lot more programming, right? And then, launch all kind of tech initiatives, e-commerce.
JC, I think it's worth it to talk about what programming is and how is it different from what exists today, because that's very innovative.
Yeah, what he said is that we have a lot of dates like to commemorate in Mexico and Latin America, right? Along the year we have a lot of them, like Christmas or Independence Day, or a lot of too many dates, right? And in the shopping malls we do not take advantage of that, right? So we're not doing any event or party to celebrate some kind of important date. And that's something that, will attract a lot of demand to the shopping mall. And, first it's an experience, and that's what you want to give to the clients or to the consumers. You want to give experience, and then they're going to remain there, and they're going to shop, or they're going to buy, or they're going to walk into the shopping mall. So that's what he thought it was important to say that programming is one of the initiatives that we are lacking in Mexico and Latin American countries. And then as I said, tech, implement a lot of tech initiatives like the one that I'm talking about, the one from Urbana, which is called Vertigo, and rent releases, rent deferrals. Then as well, all these fulfillment centers inside the shopping malls, which is very important because now you have to. There's an additional income stream with the fulfillment centers inside the shopping malls, and not this like it's not in a storage. It's more like all this kind of replacement of the space in which you have other kind of labor activity, all other, different schedule for that particular fulfillment center in the backyard of the store. And finally, this he said like not kiosk, but this pop-up stores, and pop-up stores that allowed different different brands or different tenants to sell their products, but that's like a more in a not permanently, but more in a let's say a 1 month or 2 month period in which they could they could sell and that their brands, or they could promote, or they could establish some kind of interaction with their public. But that kind of initiatives will be very important to start the recovery on the shopping malls.
Great. I think. Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. Sure. No, I'd like to mention we are living a big conflict here in Brazil, because the concept of the mall has always been to charge a minimum rent and a percentage of the sales. And the conflict here nowadays is with charging online sales. How to charge them? Because they are not happening inside the shopping malls. And how the landlord knows your amount of sales. That's a big conflict that we have nowadays.
But yeah, that's true. I'm sorry, Ant. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's very important because we have seen in the last quarter that you have monitored, we have seen as well some of these metrics or indicators that for example, key money, grace periods, all those metrics that are very important. Flexibility on the rent, fixed rent versus flex rent. It's very important because they're very loose right now. If you call them and you ask for, hey, how many months are you giving me on grace period? They say, before COVID, we were giving 3 months. Now we can give you 6 months. And the key money, forget it. I mean, there is no key money now, right? So that kind of things, I don't know if we will remain. All the aspects on the contract, on the term leases, and the tenancy agreements will change, and I think that will change not only for under the COVID circumstances, but that will remain in time.
I think there's overall subjects that we've talked about. Technology is one of those that I find the most fascinating, especially when relating to the retail space, because they're using e-commerce, which is essentially a threat to them as a business model to retain their own customers. I think that's really smart because e-commerce isn't going away anytime soon. But another thing that you guys mentioned, and it's happening both in Brazil and in Mexico, is the flexibility of the leases, rent negotiations, and forgiveness. So these all of these things have a direct impact on the income that is produced within this shopping center, right? So this obviously affects property values today, right? And, I know that you both guys have been contacted pretty frequently since the COVID pandemic started to learn about the possibility of an emerging distressed asset market. A lot of institutional players are sitting on the sidelines wondering, when is it going to be the buying opportunity post-pandemic? So, JC, tell us a little bit about what you've heard, who's contacting you, what types of deals are they looking for, etc.
Yeah, I mean, just as you mentioned, Danto, we have been contacted by institutional investors seeking, distressed asset opportunities in Mexico. But these opportunities have not yet surfaced because players have more cash than in the previous crisis, and because it is very difficult to come up with a valuation that both buyer and seller can agree on because there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. So come up with a valuation under these circumstances, I don't think it's a good idea. So this makes very difficult for the parties involved to reach an agreement, and this happened even before COVID. I mean, if we talk about retail sector, there were no land to start conversations in order to start a deal or an acquisition deal in retail sector, especially or specifically speaking, right? So it's kind of difficult because everybody or a lot of funds, a lot of institutional players are looking for these distressed opportunities, and I don't think they will find, especially in industrial. Industrial is that it's as I said, as I mentioned before, it's a sector that is behaving very well. We have a very good fundamentals, and I don't think we will find any distressed asset in the upcoming quarters, in the upcoming years. Maybe hospitality or retail. We have heard that there's one acquisition, one transaction made by an institutional player with a SECADE, Certificado de Capital de Desarrollo, but we're not pretty sure on the valuation of the property. And as well, I mean, I think it's too soon to start doing this kind of underwritings because, at least all the players in the market are looking for more information, right? They're calling us because they need information, they need comparables, they need cap rates, and we have historical information that could help, put this on the writings. And at least to give them more idea, to give you a closer idea of what will happen in the next quarters. But that's difficult to say. It's difficult to evaluate now a property under the circumstances. I think when we have this normality, or when we have a vaccine, when we have the traffic that shopping malls were used to, before COVID, or where we have all the demand in the hospitality sector, we could start talking about evaluation, and we could start talking about start of the activity in the transactional market, at least in Mexico. I know there's going to be a lot of opportunities, but get to evaluation today, it's very difficult.
Cool. That's really, really good. We'll keep informed to see when those opportunities arise. I'm sure our users and our audience today is going to be really interested in hearing about that in the near future. What about Brazil? What is the deal with distressed assets in Brazil? Does that even exist? Does it not? Tell us a little bit about that.
Anto, in Brazil, we don't see distressed assets because commercial real estate market does not generally take on that. I like to say, to end this conversation, in Brazil, they put a name of this type of distress, like trash, because if you're trying to look opportunity in this way of assets, it's tough to find. You will get some in the far from the CBD areas. Then you can do anything with this type of property, and that's it. We don't have.
Okay.
Not common here.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Anto. That's a good point, because there is a trophy assets, especially in the office. Last year we had this private transaction, which was closed at 6.4 acquisition cap rate. It was a very high valuation pre-COVID, obviously. And I think we will have those kind of opportunities as well in Mexico, especially in the CBD. But again, it's going to be tough to start doing valuations. But in office sector, we have had that transaction that it talks about how foreign funds, like the one that bought this property, which was a German fund, Deca Immobilien. They're looking at the trophy assets that we have in Mexico with good tenants, good occupancy, historical occupancy, AAA, as I said, AAA tenants, and good income. I mean, dollar-denominated contracts, etc. So we have good opportunities, but not, I don't think not that distressed as we have thought before.
Sure, that's really, really interesting. The next thing I want to do is just show these images of our team conducting these site visits and pictures of what this new normal is looking like in these different asset types. I think it's really important to view this, and as part of our methodology, we visit each of these properties to ensure data integrity. So we have these pictures that tell a story, right? Apart from that, guys, I think this has been a very interesting conversation. And I think that understanding the similarities and differences between our markets is very valuable to our audience today. Today, we've completed the overview of SiiLA's 2020 Commercial Real Estate Perspectives for Brazil and Mexico. As I mentioned at the start of the meeting, SiiLA's platform is a comprehensive database and has tremendous wealth of information for decision-making. And if you're interested, please get in touch with us at contact@SiiLA.com. And, now I'd like to just open the forum for any questions, if there's any. Let me check. I don't see any questions. Do you guys see any questions?
No.
Nope.
Okay, so if there are no questions, I'd like to thank Giancarlo from SiiLA Brazil and Jose Carlos from SiiLA Mexico for being here with me today. I think we've had a very rich discussion of what's going on in the commercial real estate markets of Latin America. And we'll be sure to let you know when we do another one of these so you guys can stay informed and up to date. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anto.
Thank you, guys.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a great week.
Goodbye.
Bye.